So welcome to the Drupal usability meeting for October 13th, 2020. I'm Benji Fisher. No particular expertise, I'm just running the Zoom. And also on the meeting with us are Ben Mullins, who plans to present an issue for us, Christina Chumias, and Larry Escola. So thank you all for coming. And Ben, can you share your screen?
Yes. All right, so this is regarding the issue 307-6171. I will admit that until a moment ago, I had not, I didn't remember that this was even tagged with needs usability review. But this is as good a time as any, I think, to summarize the issue and perhaps get that rubber stamp. So the priority of this issue is due to jQuery UI reaching end of life. So we need to find an autocomplete solution that does not use a library that has reached end of life. So that's the priority here. And initially, we were planning on using Usability as the replacement library. And there was a comment maybe from a month or two ago where it was pointed out, comment 53, where it was pointed out that we override so much of the Usability library's functionality as far as what it's doing when it's getting results, when it's rendering results, that it's 80–90% custom anyways. So the current patch is a fully custom solution that doesn't use a library. That's something that I did largely to see if it was feasible and discovered it was. So we haven't, there's no agreement one way or the other whether we should move on to that, although there are some benefits to it. But as far as UX is concerned, both patches reproduce the exact experience of well, actually, no, let me rewind there. Both patches are visually the same as jQuery UI. And the difference between the Usability patch is that the Usability patch keyboard navigation matches jQuery UI's autocomplete keyboard navigation. And the custom patch, currently the keyboard navigation matches that of the UK government's accessible autocomplete model and adheres to modern, to the best of my knowledge, modern accessibility patterns. So instead of using tab to choose each item, it's arrow navigation. That's the biggest difference, but that can be changed. But regarding specific usability feedback, I suppose the question that I would have is that, are there any usability concerns regarding the current jQuery UI autocomplete that are urgent enough that it would merit having them being addressed as part of this library change? Or is the status quo acceptable enough that usability concerns could be done in the scope of another issue? That's pretty much it for the summary, and yeah, run questions by me.
Could you run a little demo just so we're clear what we're talking about?
Yes, yeah, that's a great suggestion. Let's see. So, all right. So basically, it's this functionality where it just provides suggestions. You click if you want to do multiple. You throw a comma in there. So it's the functionality that gets a set of results via an AJAX request, displays them, and allows you to choose them. And that was previously done by jQuery UI autocomplete. And what you're viewing right now is the patch that has a fully custom solution. So really the only big difference is I'm using the arrows to select. And if I use tab, it advances me to the next focusable field. And that's, to the best of my knowledge, how it's supposed to be done. But that standard, hey, that's a more recently agreed upon standard preceding jQuery UI.
So,
Yeah,
so
so that's what it is.
in your opinion, that this difference between the custom patch and the awesome plate is a feature, not a bug?
Yes, yes, yeah. It's adhering, and again with the disclaimer, to the best of my knowledge, modern accessibility standards, and I would get an accessibility maintainer to concur on that. But yes, that's the only difference is matching modern accessibility standards.
So I'm running the jQuery UI version right now, and I think it's also using the keyboard navigation. Is that correct?
Oh, okay. So let me see. Let me go through my memory. It may be that awesome plate uses tabs.
Okay.
And so, yeah, okay. I thank you for pointing that out. I did misremember that. It was awesome plate where you were using tabs to choose options, and that differs. So this custom solution is adheres to the accessibility standards and maintains jQuery UI's interactions.
So it's very similar to what jQuery UI would be providing. At least the intention is for it to be very similar to that.
Yeah. Now that you've reminded me that it was Awesome Plate that had the tab issue and not jQuery UI, the experience itself should be indistinguishable. So it would really, I think the biggest UX concern would be is that if there had been anything that's so dire that it should be addressed as part of this library swap.
So what happens if you try to write Afghanistan again on the field? So yeah, you get the same experience that it tries to autocomplete it to the same one, and you can have one reference multiple times. Yeah, okay. Because that was, I think, part of some of the libraries, they prevented this.
And yeah, is that desirable to prevent it or not?
I don't know. It's not necessarily something we want to decide as part of this issue, because the behavior right now is so that it doesn't prevent that from happening.
Okay. The part that I would say is a pro of the fully custom solution is it would be much easier to make that modification if there was a desire to do so. The awesome plate, or pretty much any library that we looked at, would be subject to the same complexity where we have to do so many things to bend it to our specific needs that the layer of abstraction between our customizations and the library is, in my opinion, more complex than having a single file that takes care of everything.
So I'm not a usability expert, but it seems like we are not making any intentional changes, at least to the experience. So seems like that we could untag this from needs usability review. But I would love to hear what Christina and Benji, what do you think about that?
I really don't have a strong opinion. It makes sense, but yeah, I don't think my opinion will make any change here. I can add any value.
I think that if there are no regressions from the current behavior, I don't think that it particularly needs any usability. I don't see any usability concerns if it doesn't create regressions.
I think the
Yeah.
usability review tag is from when we were using Awesomecomplete, which did change the experience slightly.
Oh. Makes sense.
Meanwhile, I've been doing a little bit of testing with existing Drupal sites. I have a local copy of the Umami demo running, and it behaves similarly. And then also on Drupal.org, which is a Drupal 7 site, the autocomplete is less user-friendly when trying to use keyboard navigation. But I guess I will perhaps give it a little testing myself. But yeah, if there are no noticeable differences, then yeah, I don't think there's any problem from the usability perspective.
I guess the next step would be then, now that we are potentially moving forward with a custom solution, would be to identify what are the pain points from usability point of view on this. Like if there are changes that we could introduce to the way this works that would improve the usability of the element.
So you mean in general for autocomplete?
Yes.
I think, well, so obviously making this richer on a visual perspective will be one of them. Like having more info, or having groups, or having, I don't know, more complex, or having more options. But if we are just talking about the default one, I don't know.
So for example, I think on some of the Claro designs, there's a proposal to use a kind of the pills type of design, so that
Exactly.
once you have auto-completed something, you cannot modify it, you can only remove it from the list.
Yeah, but that will mean also that could mean that, yeah, it's like an item and you can click on remove it just by removing the whole thing. It can actually import it. So the idea will be to import some info from that thing, like if it's an entity, I don't know. Some suggestions were like using the ID or using an icon, or I don't know. So it depends on how far we want to go. But yeah, obviously, I guess this is the simpler thing we can have. But yeah, so I guess two different things is how we represent whatever we are selecting, and the other is how we select that. And the drop-down itself can change a lot also. Like being able to have like different depths, for example, like one thing inside another, and showing that visually on a different way. But I'm not sure how far this is connected with JavaScript options that we have. I mean, no, I'm not sure how we are limited right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure either if we support any type of grouping. I've not seen that, but yeah.
I suppose even if it's not necessarily in scope in this issue, if there is some sort of UX wish list, having it documented in that issue can inform some of the design decisions and how I've implemented it. I did attempt in the custom solution to have it be as flexible as possible to allow for future modification, but knowing what kind of modifications the community is interested in, may alert me to additional places that could be made to facilitate easier customization. So if any items like that come to mind, I would encourage documenting it on the issue, knowing that it wouldn't actually be implemented in the issue, but it would inform how the implementation happens.
I'm gonna share with you a link to Figma for the current designs for the drop down.
Let's take a look at those.
So there are several things, both on the drop-down itself and on the entity reference on the right. One is the thing that Laurie was saying, and the other is what I was saying, as if you take a look at the bottom of the artboard itself. Yeah, so for example, on the right, what I was talking about is, what Laurie was talking about is having like a component that in some other design systems is called pill, which actually it not only shows the label of the item, but also it can show something else, like for example the ID, or like if it's a person, it can show the small icon, and it can also have the cross to close the item and delete it. That's one of the things that we were saying. And if you go to the left at the bottom where it says variant with elements, something else that we were seeing here is that you can see there's a line just a little bit under it on the drop down here. Mm-hmm. So here we can see there are two groups, and for example, we could have like checkboxes, and this is something that we've found on other kind of JavaScript solutions that they are implementing that. It doesn't mean that we need to do that. It's just that those are some things that we kind of explored that might be interesting on a UX perspective. It doesn't mean that it has to be on core neither. Mm-hmm. So
right, what I think the goal for, since we're leaning towards a custom implementation anyways, would be not necessarily to implement anything like this, but it would be nice that if such an implementation were desired, it could be achieved by replacing a method in a class instead of having to do something far more complex. So having this as a reference can help me double check what I've done so far and make sure something like this can be accomplished without too much difficulty.
Okay, cool.
I'm just experimenting with the current implementation. Oh, you're no longer sharing?
Oh, I can bring it back up if helpful. Hold on.
I just noticed that when I tab, I do in fact go to the next focusable element. But when I try to get back to where I was, Shift tab doesn't do that. Is that? I'm not even sure what causes that. Perhaps it's the tab order of the element rather than being related to the widget you're using.
I suspect that's it. I'm double checking right now, and it looks like I'm able to shift tab back with in a predictable manner.
And then the only sort of usability question that pops into my mind is the discoverability. How do you know that cursor arrows go up and down the list and tab goes to the next element. And maybe that's standard enough that that we don't need any indicators. It's certainly something I would try. But in principle, the best practice is to have some indication that arrows do one thing and tab does another, and enter selects.
So yeah, and that follows existing patterns. And my concern would be having it documented may actually cause more confusion because people are accustomed to a certain pattern, and then having something pointing out something that's already embedded can lead to doubt for something that would otherwise be assumed correct. So that's a concern I would have by documenting something like that. If it deviated from the norm, I think documentation would be critical. So that's my take on it.
So how common is this pattern elsewhere on the web? Where are people accustomed to using autocompletes?
Yes, it's more and more useful.
And in general, the established pattern for any kind of list that is revealed as a result of interacting with the trigger element. So in a menu dropdown, for example, the assumption is that if the toggle element is triggered via keyboard, then the items are accessed via arrow navigation.
I think some of the most popular websites, such as Google and Facebook, are using this pattern already. And they do use the arrow pattern, as far as I remember. So, and even I think the browser is using that. I don't know. Actually, now that I'm testing Chrome, it seems like Chrome would allow you to use both. But for example, Google, I think, doesn't. Yeah, so if you go to Google, it would only allow you to navigate by arrows.
Google search or Gmail or?
Google search, yeah. Same would apply to Gmail, it seems like.
And yeah, here it is allowing tab, which is based on the research I've done, that's actually not recommended, but I can also see how some people might expect it. It's also not how the fact that the pattern is that tab shouldn't allow you to select items, and that's how it currently is, I think sort of establishes that as the one we should stick with.
Okay, I'm satisfied. Is there any other questions? Any other comments?
Yeah, I don't think on a usability perspective we can actually give much more info here.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So who wants to add a comment to the issue and maybe give a link to the Figma document, because
Yes.
that pretty much addresses your request for some idea of what future requests might involve.
I'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Um,
I just posted the link on Slack in case you want to change. Just close the Zoom.
Thank you.
and I think, let me share my screen. The only other issue that we might discuss today, I'm not seeing the green outline. Are you seeing my screen, my window scroll?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the window I intended to share. I've certainly looked at this issue before, but not in a long time. And someone gave it a slightly humorous title. It's issue 2865920. When a site is multiple security releases behind for a given project, they are all listed in a paralyzing wall of terror. And if you were running Drupal core 8.1.10 when this screenshot was made, you would have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm sorry, 6 security updates, 1 recommended version, 1 latest version, and that's too much information. There hasn't been a lot of activity, although, well, in January, XJM added a comment, we should also retest what happens with this issue now that Drupal.org has changed how insecure releases are handled. Does the wall of terror persist? That sounds like it's not really, this issue is not really ready for a usability review, just based on that comment. So I think rather than try to run out the time on the meeting, we should just close it early and perhaps I'll have a chance to look at this and talk about it next week.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm glad you were available then on short notice, and I hope that good luck getting that issue in. Thanks
Thank
for all
you.
your work on it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you all.